Watch Dogs is at an interesting point as a series right now. The original was interesting but lacked much of the freedom and control of the environment that was implied by its marketing. The sequel kicked it up a notch with a far more likable main character and a lighter tone that didn't take itself quite so seriously.
You can see the whole city from here.
Whole lot of people out there, man. Whole lot of people.
All while delivering on the promises of the first game much more, despite having some technical issues at launch. Even still, despite that turnaround from the first game to the second, Watch Dogs 2 didn't sell terribly well. In fact, pre-order numbers fell so short of expectations that Ubisoft had to completely recalculate their projected sales of the game as a whole. Even still, Watch Dogs 2 really did lay the groundwork for what the series could be, with its wealth of hackable devices and myriad ways to cause chaos. That sense of freedom and control that the original aimed for was more or less hit by the time a few updates had come out, and eventually the game would get in the hands of over 10 million gamers, which is, even by today's standards, quite a lot of market penetration. That said, it should be no surprise that Ubisoft's next foray into the malleable, hackable, cyberpunk-light world of Watch Dogs Legion is aiming for even greater heights. Now that the team behind it has that firm grasp that comes with being 3 games deep into a series, Watch Dogs Legion could be poised for one hell of a successful launch later this year, perhaps even surpassing its competition in what is certainly going to be a crowded second half of 2020. Firstly, Watch Dogs Legion is doing what any self-respecting third game of a series would do by taking the concept of the original, the improvements of the sequel, and cramming in all sorts of new ideas.
Lieutenant! Help!
Reinforcements are converging on your position.
This is generally what a third game of a series needs to do. An initial outing in any series is a canary in the coal mine. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. If it does, a sequel can emphasize what worked and what was liked most about the original while fixing or losing what didn't. The third game is where a lot of franchises slip up, either by playing things too safe by replicating the previous game, or by innovating to the point where the game loses too much of the special sauce that made the franchise interesting in the first place. It is a delicate balance, but it must be maintained. New ideas are definitely needed in a third game, but generally turning up the original concepts to 11 seems to work out well most of the time. On top of all the hacking of cameras and public utilities that Watch Dogs fans are accustomed to at this point, Legion also earns its name by encouraging the recruitment of random characters throughout the game for you to add to your own resistance force and tackle the challenges of the world with. Kind of like Metal Gear Solid 5, except instead of recruiting expertly trained paramilitary goons, it's everyday folks off the street. Protesters, security guards, construction workers, and even senior citizens can be brought into your ranks. These characters often even have unique traits that you can leverage in certain missions, like for instance using the previously mentioned construction worker to use his wrench and nail gun to make short work of enemy guards. This not only drives home the anything goes promise of the original 2 games, but it also introduces an interesting wrinkle to the game that should interest anybody who likes this type of thing. It's also a dash of creativity that Ubisoft really needs in its repertoire right now. One of Legion's most interesting characteristics is its setting of future London. While most games of this sort take place in New York or California, London is a setting that can offer much of the variety of US cities, but also with a little flavor of its own. While LA and New York are gorgeous, massive cities that make all the sense in the world for a video game to take place in, they are also very young cities compared to the metropolitan areas across the pond. London is around 2,000 years old, many times older than any city in the US, and with that comes many more generations of architecture, transportation systems, and other design philosophies that will show themselves in many ways in a game like this. Given that, as well as the creative freedom that comes with a game being a few decades in the future, Watch Dogs Legion will have an absolute ton of potential for unique locales and compelling variety that few other 2020 games will. If Ubisoft uses this setting to its potential and really harnesses that capacity for entertainment value, it could really surprise gamers in a big way when it launches later this year. One thing that Watch Dogs has realized about itself over its 2-game lifespan is that it does best when it's focusing on craziness and fun, rather than dystopian realism. Hell, if you want that, all you have to do is walk outside these days. Right now, what gamers really want are fun, crazy worlds to mess around in, interesting larger-than-life characters to get entranced by, and pulpy stories that don't worry too much about the constraints of realism. Doubling down on the pulpy tone of 2 seems like a winning strategy for Legion, and it should go a long way towards setting itself apart from other, more serious games of the year, like Ghost of Tsushima and, well, pretty much everything else. Another element of Legion that we can expect to enjoy is the massive array of technology and gadgets at your disposal, and the variety they can bring to how you approach missions. From spider bots to massive cargo drones and a stunning amount of things in between, this game will give you plenty of toys to play with, and that's not even counting the doors that open up, both figuratively and literally, if you're able to recruit one of the Albion private military goons into your team. All the tools, weapons, and skill sets of certain people available to your corruption are enough variables to really make the possibilities in Watch Dogs Legion feel limitless if they pan out the way they appear they will. While Legion is certainly not the only open-world action-adventure game coming out this year, and it's not even the only cyberpunk-style game coming out this year, it does look to have lots of its own personality injected into the experience. The vastness of the world, the scope of the possibilities, and the character of the game's tone all seem to be meshing together in a way that can easily make this game stand out much more than your typical Ubisoft open-world fare. This unique mixture of power, freedom, and control is unlike what most games are able to achieve in this era, and no matter what comes of it, it's nice to see the personality of this series realized to such a degree. Hopefully, it's enough to make those who might have passed on the previous 2 games give the series a second look. But at the very least, it should serve as a nice capstone to the ambition and idea of Watch Dogs as a series. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.